Boone coming in hot, Chinchy. How we doing, brother?
Coming in super hot. You call me brother. We are kind of like brothers, but we're not like all-star brothers. We're not like Batman and Robin, like one of the brothers we have on right now. So this is gonna be a great one, dude.
Dude, we'll just keep bringing on the Boone family, bro. We just had Aaron
Yeah.
on. We're bringing in Bret this week. I want to introduce him, make an introduction before we get going. Now, this is an impressive resume because I played with this guy in 1998. He's not going to say it, so I'm going to say it. This guy's one of the best second basemen in Major League Baseball history, period. No doubt about it. Go look at the numbers and go compare some of the guys that we got in Cooperstown. 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glover. One of the best, like I said, defensive second baseman, too, offensively, too. 2-time Silver Slugger, tough to win those awards. Won the RBI, AL RBI leader in 2001. Drafted by the Mariners, played with the Mariners, the Reds, Braves, Padres, and back with the Mariners at the end of his career, a little bit with the Twins. We won't even talk about that. Maybe about
that doesn't
3
count.
weeks.
That doesn't count.
Twins don't count, Booney, right? That was,
yeah, we all have those 3 weeks at some time in our career, you know.
That's the truth. First ever, too. This is incredible. 3rd generation big leaguer. His grandfather Ray and his dad Bob played in the big leagues for a long time. So, hey, without further ado, let's bring him in here. Bret Boone, what's up, Booney? How you doing, man?
What's going on? Thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, great to have you on. And I was on your podcast last week. First off, the Boone podcast, which is, dude, it's incredible. I was just saying on our podcast this morning, it's incredible the connections that you have, because the people that are on your podcast are basically the who's who of not only sports, but definitely in baseball. So how's that going, dude? Are you enjoying doing it? Are you enjoying getting the guests? I know we were talking about that, how sometimes texting our friends can be a pain in the ass.
It can be, you know, and I've gotten used to it, though, Case. I've gotten used to having no shame. And, you know, that's a change, though, because as players and, you know, we did this for a long time. I never asked anybody for anything. You know, it was just like, hey, I'll take care of myself. You take care of yourself. But now it's like, hey, you know, Freddie, I need you on the podcast. What are you talking about? Yeah, I need you to, you know, it's going to be about an hour. And at the beginning, I felt kind of silly. But as it goes on, I text, you don't answer me, I text you back again. I text you back again. And
who told you that? Who told you that? No shame.
That's right. That's right. Check out the Boone podcast. We already talked about this. But help me out. Who was it? Oh,
Digger Phelps. Digger Phelps.
I had Digger on early in the early podcast days when I was first starting. And, you know, we finished up. It was a great show. And he said, I was just talking to him because Digger's obviously been in this industry for forever. And he gave me some advice. He goes, Booney, if you're going to do this for real, be relentless, have no shame, get the guest. And I take that. So every time, you know, one of my buddies doesn't text me back, I think, what would Digger do? So I do what Digger would do. But you know what, Case, it's been interesting. You know, it's been 2 years of I started off, didn't want to do it. It was during the COVID times, and my agent had me start it. I needed some reps on this side of the mic, and it's been a learning process for me. It's been I've learned a lot. I've learned how to breathe. I've learned how to, you know, speak in sound bites, and it's been really interesting. I know you've been doing MLB for quite a bit now, but you know that when you first do it, you think you're pretty good. But as time goes on, you're always learning, and it's like anything else. It's something we haven't done, and all of a sudden, oh, we're doing it now. Okay, now I'm a host. You know, I'm used to getting interviewed, and now I'm hosting people. What is that like? What is that like to ask Sean Casey questions? So it's been an interesting process, but I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Booney, I love it. What's the biggest skill you've learned from doing this? Like, what's been your biggest skill that you feel like you've gotten better at?
Listen. Listen to my guests, you know, because at the beginning I was very scripted and I had it all written out and I had bullet points and I was going to it. And, you know, for instance, I'd be interviewing Sean Casey and you'd get through a story. And then I had question number 3 down. Oh, Sean. Okay. And it was an interview. When I found the best podcasts and the best forums for entertainment is it's a conversation. It's like we're sitting in a golf cart bullshitting.
Yeah.
Not Sean Casey. Okay, now question number 4. What is your favorite player? You know, At the beginning, we all do that because we want to get through it. We want to,
Right.
I just found more natural. The conversation is the best way. And I've heard somebody put it to me. They said, one day I was talking to a buddy of mine. He goes, Booney, that last podcast, I forget who the guest was. He goes, I got home, I was in my driveway, and I couldn't get out of my car. It was that good. That's when you know you did a good one. If we're driving and we put stuff on in the car time to time. If you come home, you sit in the driveway and you're kind of like, hey, get the milk out of the back. And it's like, wait a minute. We got 7 more minutes going on this podcast. Because most of the time we just turn the engine off. We'll get to it later, but you had a good one if you keep people in their car.
Yeah, it's so true. That's so true. Booney, I want to stick a little bit on what's going on in Major League Baseball now and kind of get your take on it. Okay. Especially you living out there in San Diego, what Preller's been doing with that club for the last so many years, and also your team, the Mariners, and just some of the things that are going on right now, and the also what you think about the brand in Major League Baseball. Let's start a little bit looking back at what the Padres are doing. Like what do you like about what are you hearing out there in San Diego, and are you in the know about what Preller's doing? Do you like what he's doing? Do you like where that team's going?
What I heard was they got a lot of money. They got a lot of money right now, yeah. and they're willing to spend it. I don't think. Okay, you look at the main guys, and it's Tatis. Obviously, he had we'll get into that a little bit if you want to, but he had his hiccups last year. And I think that's been pretty well documented. But he's a $300+ million guy. You got Manny Machado at third base, one of the best third basemen in the game, one of the best players in the game. You've got Juan Soto, who's going to be a free agent in a year. To me, I think he had a rough year last year, but if you would asked me before the 2022 season, I'd say he's right up there with the best offensive players in baseball, if not the best. The best from an on-base percentage to the new data points that we take and they make they're kind of judging you by in 2023. Juan Soto's definitely that guy. And then you bring in the shortstop from Boston.
Bogarts.
Wow. Another $300 million or close to $300 million guy. What are you going to do? You got a Juan Soto question mark in a year. Machado can opt out of his deal if he wants in a year. People are saying if things go smoothly, he's probably going to do that. But for this year, you've got, for me, the best offense in baseball. I don't see anybody that's better than them. I'm not going to say somebody's not as good, but I don't see on paper anybody better than that. I think the big question is going to be, how is Tatis received? We had Juan Soto the other day, I don't know if you caught it, was saying we're going to welcome him with open arms. He's the man. That's what Juan Soto said. I think Tatis is the man, and we touched on this briefly case last week. It's going to be really interesting, the dynamic when you bring a 22-year-old, I don't know what he is now, 21, 22, 23-year-old, after what he's been through. He got popped for the PEDs. He had the motorcycle accident. These are things you do when you're 21 years old and you think you're bulletproof. We were all there at one point. Yep. And, then he covered it up. He did what he did. And then he came out and said he had ringworm, things that 21-year-olds do. I think the most important thing for a young Tatis to do, because I think he's an Alex Rodriguez talent. I watch him quite a bit. It took me, and I don't say that lightly.
Right, I know you don't. Yeah.
At first, I watched him and I said, well, this guy's this and this. And I watched him longer and longer. I said, he does stuff that Alex did when he was young. And Alex, one of the greatest, put up some of the greatest numbers in the history. I think Tatis needs to come into camp hat in hand. I think he needs to get right with his teammates because, as we know, that's the most important thing. Having those 25 guys that are your teammates in that clubhouse, having your back and whatever needs to be talked about from what happened, get right with them. Make amends to your teammates because that's what really matters when the national anthem ends for the first time. That's what matters is having those 25 guys in there. You go out, do your job, play like you can play. The rest of it's going to take care of itself. You play great. Believe me, fans are very forgiving. They will come back. I think if Tatis does this right, he grows up a little bit. He takes he's accountable for his actions, and he plays like he can play. I think in 5 years from now, it's going to be a footnote. That being said, it cracks me up in San Diego how they're saying he's going to play left field. That cracks me up. When you're that good of a player and that level of a talent, and you're a shortstop, you don't just go play left field. You want to play short. So I think they're going to have that on their hands. I think it's a good thing to have, though. And I think a guy like Bob Melvin, I played for him in Seattle in 2000.
What's Bob like? I mean, because everyone talks about, oh, Bo Mel, this guy's. What's he like, Booney?
Bobby, I got him when he was very young. It was his first managing gig. It was 2003, 2004. He came in, was pretty green. I had a lot of talks with him in the office. I was a veteran in Seattle at the time, kind of helping him the ins and outs of the Seattle and how it worked. He's seasoned now, obviously. He's been in this game for a long time, ever since 2003 as a big league manager, probably his 20th year. He's just got a real calming personality. Nothing's too much. He's endearing at the same time. He's calculated, he's smart, he's prepared. But out of all those things I just used, those ways to describe him, I think he's just a calming presence. He's not a guy that can get rattled and things can go crazy and get chaotic in a clubhouse. I think Bo Mel has a way about him where you just keep moving along, and he'll work out. He'll probably bring Tatis. Hey, how you feeling? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? It's all going to work out in the long run. I mean, I think it's a good thing having a Baumgartner, having a Tatis, having a Machado, and having a Soto, and maybe there's a problem of who's going to play where. I think that's a good problem to have. Yu Darvish still doing what he's doing. Musgrove is a horse. And
do you think
help me out? Who's the lefty? Who's the lefty that came from Tampa Bay?
Oh, Blake Snell.
Snell started to finally pitch like the Tampa Bay Snell they were expecting the second half of last year. He's the key for me, Case, in that rotation. I know what I'm getting with Musgrove. He's a bulldog. He's going to take the ball. He's going to go every fifth day. He's going to pitch great. I think Yu Darvish, when is that line where you're starting to get Father Time catches up with you? Hasn't caught up with him yet. Still a top line starter. Snell's the key to that rotation. If Snell is Snell of Tampa Bay, at 1, 2, 3 is pretty tough.
What do you think about, like, the Dodgers didn't do much this offseason? It looks like they didn't, go out and get a big free agent. Is it the Padres' time? Do you think 2023 is the year the Padres can actually take over the West?
I think without a doubt from a talent standpoint. That being said, Dodgers didn't do much. We're used to them doing a lot in the offseason. They lost both Turners. Bellinger probably needed a change of scenery. Yeah. I don't know. I think Justin Turner is going to be a bigger loss than the Dodgers think. He's kind of the heartbeat of that team. But you look around that field, they still got a ton of talent on that Dodgers team. You still got Mookie Betts in right field. I mean, you got all-stars all over the place. So I think they're still pretty good. See how Kershaw does. He's coming back for one more year. Urias at the top of the rotation. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. One of my favorite pitchers in the game. Gonsolin had a great year. Walker,
that's right.
Walker Buehler, he's coming back. They missed him last year. Surgery. That's the key to that rotation. He's their number one guy, horse at the top. I think the Dodgers are going to be just fine. They got a power bullpen. They just haven't. We're used to them making big offseason splashes. We're used to them doing what the Mets are doing every offseason, and this offseason they didn't. But the talent they have in place is pretty good. So Padres could take over, but they're going to have to go take it from the Dodgers because the Dodgers are still really good.
Well, we've been, talking about a lot of different young guys. Obviously, I want to go out to Seattle, where obviously that's where your bread and butter is. You're still a legend out there in Seattle. What about what do you see from Julio Rodriguez? I mean, you just got the big contract. The guy looks like a real five-tool guy. Have you had a chance to see him in person, and what impresses you about him?
Yeah, another guy. It took me a while. I like to watch. And I watched and I watched and I watched. And I remember them getting the contract out. And I went on I had a show up there Wednesday night. They said, Booney, that's a lot of money to give to a guy that's only done it for a half a season in the big leagues. And I remember my answer when I've seen enough. I said, that skill set right there, that swing, that approach, that doesn't go away. That maybe goes into a slump, but that's the real deal. Case, when you're watching somebody and that's the real deal. I don't need to see anymore. Yeah. That's what I see with him. And he's a talent. I went out there and I threw out a first pitch and I forget, I've never been the tallest of folk, but it seems like the kids today are getting bigger and bigger. And I went out there, I threw out the first pitch to him and he came, you come over, you give the handshake, and this guy's a monster. I mean, he's 6'4". And it just, but on TV, I think he's just a normal guy, 6'1", 6'4", and just long limbs and just
Yeah.
impressive. I think he's one of those guys that's going to be, well, obviously you see the passion he plays with. He's kind of a Tatis of Seattle. He plays with his heart on his sleeve. He's
Great
kind of that
comp.
rock star mentality. He's the face of that organization, and he definitely changes the dynamic of that organization. Last year, first year getting to the playoffs in 20 years. So I think a lot of good things are in store for the Mariners. I'm a little puzzled of why they didn't go out and really make some moves this offseason. I think their starting rotation is as good as anybody, but there's always some nooks and crannies you can add to that team. I'm a little, I don't want to say disappointed, but I'm a little puzzled why they didn't add on.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And Jerry DiPoto is usually just opening up the checkbook. I'm like, hey, come on in. So we'll see. He's got some sort of game plan there. There's no doubt about it. I want to go back to what we just talked about a little bit at the beginning of the conversation. You're talking about Julio Rodriguez, because I'm always interested when I have great hitters on to ask them about that. When you look at Julio Rodriguez, you say, hey, man, that approach plays. Hey, that bat path plays. That bat speed plays. Take us back to Bret Boone. Like, man, it seemed like you had a lot of power to right center. What was your approach at the plate?
As a young kid, wow. I came up, I got through the minor leagues really quick. I got to the big leagues, and I hit a wall. And I didn't expect to hit that wall. I remember getting my first base hit, Case. It was my first at bat off Arthur Rhodes in Camden Yards, and I got to first base, and I believe Randy Milligan was playing first. And he said, I got fireworks going off inside, but I'm trying to play it cool. And I get the ball, and he looks at me, he goes, kid, he goes, congratulations. He said, you got 2,999 to go. And I remember looking at him, thinking to myself, I'm going to get way more hits than that. That was me as a 22-year-old kid. I mean, that's how I really thought. Now, fast forward 198 at bats, which I got my first stint in the big leagues, hitting about 195. And humble pie came my way really quick. And I remember Edgar Martinez coming up to me, at the end of that first call up and saying, hey, Booney, you're going to have to start hitting the breaking pitch. and I looked at him and I said, Edgar, damn it, you're going to be the one to help me. So I went into that off season and I worked on it. I started sitting on pitches, and Lou Piniella came into the mix, and I remember Lou would take me. He was hard on me at the beginning. Lou Piniella, by the way, my favorite manager of all time.
Really? Why?
Me and him are tight.
Yeah.
Because we went through the wars together when I was a young player. He treated me so hard. I mean, we almost went to blows 3 or 4 times my first full season. And I couldn't stand him. And he'd send me down, and he'd call me back up. I was on that shuttle all year. And finally we had a drop dead, we had it out. And he said, here's the deal, Booney. You're either going to be my second base for the next 15 years, or I'm going to trade your ass at the end of the season. I said, fair enough, Skip. Just leave me the F alone. Right. And I had a really good second half. And by the end of the year, the press thought we were always at war, but by the end of the year, we were on good terms. He was calling me in to bet the football games with him. So we went into the off season, and about a week into it, I get a call and said, you've been traded. But it wasn't because Lou and I weren't on good terms. We had a lot of young middle infielders at the time, and they needed a catcher. Right. Dave Valley was retiring, and they had a young Dan Wilson in Cincinnati. So it was kind of a Dan Wilson for Bret Boone type trade. I went to Cincinnati, enjoyed my time there, and then came back full circle in 2001 with Lou. And now I was a veteran player, so it was different. And we had an understanding. The reason I liked Lou so much is he's tough, but if you prove to him, if he respects you as a man and he respects you as a player, he'll take a bullet for you. And that guy will do anything for you. Now, if he doesn't respect you as a man or a player, he will beat you into the ground. And I saw him do that to a lot of players, and it not necessarily what I would do as a skipper, but just for me personally, I love Lou, and
Yeah.
we went through so much together. He's so funny. There's so many stories. Um, I'm sorry, I'm getting off track on what I was like as a young hitter. My hair was on fire, and I just
Right.
wanted to swing hard, and I just wanted to get hits. When really inside, all I wanted to do was to prove to my teammates in my organization that I belonged and I was a big leaguer. And it took a little bit of time for me. It took some going up and down. And the 92 season I came up, 93, I was back in the big leagues, but I was on the shuttle and I ended up getting about 280 at bats. That's finally when that second half of 93 is, is where I kind of established myself a little bit. And then 94, I went to Cincinnati in my first full year. I hit 320. So it was kind of off to the races from there. But man, uh, lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
I wish I knew then what I knew now type
Mm.
situation for me.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot the second half of my career, especially when I went back to Seattle for the second time. I really matured as a hitter from the mental side, how to
Mm.
prepare for 162 games, not just go up there swinging hard, looking for the ball and hit it. I wasn't a guy that could just see ball, hit ball. I had to have an approach. I had to look at parts, at quarters of the plate. What was my approach? Am I sitting soft? Am I looking hard? A lot of different things.
Did you mostly look hard? I was more of a hit off the fastball, anything spinning up, let my eyes let it travel. What was your approach as far as that went?
Different, whether I was facing a lefty or a righty. If I've got a
Mm.
John Smoltz, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
a modern day DeGrom type,
Mm-hmm.
when they've got 2+ pitches, a Pedro, I wasn't going to hit them both. I got to get on one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's a lefty, I could kind of cheat a little bit more. I can hang out over the plate and just kind of look for the ball because everything's coming into me. So I didn't really have a problem with that from the left when I was facing a left-hander. But righty on righty, 2+ pitches, I was either soft or hard.
Mm.
Usually soft because if I sat soft, I wouldn't chase. If I sat hard, I would chase the breaking ball. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. You chase the slider.
Correct. So I would
Yeah.
sit, especially when I wasn't seeing the ball good. I'd be going through a period where I just wasn't picking up the spin, whatever it may be. I would sit soft because then I wouldn't chase, and I had the ability to sit soft, only swing at a strike for a breaking ball, and take the fastball. Now, the only problem with that is if I've got a real inept catcher, and he sees me take that fastball down the middle, kind of looks at me like, wait a minute, you don't take that pitch if you're looking for a fastball. So now I might have to change up my plan. But
Yeah.
I had an interesting way of, I took I watched a lot the second half of my career. I was really a student of the game. Edgar, we mentioned at the top, was a huge influence on me the second half of my career from an offensive standpoint. So I really picked his brain. I watched guys like Manny Ramirez, how they went about their business, especially no disrespect, but I couldn't talk to left-handed hitters. You guys live in a different world. Johnny Olerud was my partner for years at first base. And he'd talk hit with me. And I said, Johnny, we can't talk hitting. We really can't. But now, interesting. This game is so hard. And that's what I miss about the game. I don't miss going 0 for 4 and not getting the runner in from third with less than 2 outs. But I do miss that mental battle
Mm.
that you have with that pitcher and the cat and mouse and the did I plan right? Everybody says it's when you look for pitches, you're guessing. It's not guessing. It's educated. It's an educated approach. And it doesn't mean I went from curveball to slider to no, I either sit soft or I'm looking for that heater. There's two ways to go about it. And I didn't waver. I don't go soft one pitch, hard next pitch. No, I'm soft. It might take me 3 or 4 pitches, but eventually you're going to get to that pitch. The key then is when you get it, don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Ain't that the truth? Man, this, I love Booney. I love this stuff. Now, with you as a hitter, because I want to get into this a little bit. You kind of had your top hand. I don't know if it was wrapped, but it wasn't like you weren't lining up the knocking knuckles.
No.
Am I correct by saying that? You
Correct.
kind of were like this. I'm like, man, how's he doing that? And when I see a guy that because Trout's not like the knocking knuckle. He's a little turned like this where his knuckles aren't exactly lined up. And I always think like, man, if you are going to have a top hand like that, you really got to let the ball travel. Because if you're living out front all the time with that top hand, it's tough to totally get through it. And I feel like, you were so good at right center, bro. A lot of even at Safeco Park, man, you had legit power to right center. Can you talk about that a little bit? Were you trying to let the ball travel more because of how you held your hands? Were you trying to let it get deeper in your body?
Without a doubt. And it was unique. You know, I try to look at some other hitters. I think Griffey kind of did a little bit. The wrapping the top hand, what it did for me is I got a point in my career, I think it was the late 90s, where I started to be vulnerable inside. And I kept on, you know, I had the normal grip. I don't know if it was knuckle to knuckle.
Right.
But they got me to commit to that inside pitch. And I don't mean inside pitch, inside off the plate.
Yeah.
When I wrapped my top hand, I couldn't offer it the pitch in off the plate. So it was almost like a built-in mechanism. So I couldn't do it. I'd break my wrist. So that's the reason I did it. That's the reason I started I had to quit swinging at the pitch. They were wearing me out inside and not wearing me out for a strike in off the plate.
Yeah.
So when I just wrapped the crap out of my top hand and you'd come inside to me and I couldn't do it. I couldn't swing. So it was an automatic stop me. Wow. So that's how it all started. And it ended up being a drill that, you know, Jay Buhner was a guy that always said, take the knob to the ball. Right. Well, this allowed me to do that too. It was almost like I was punching the ball. So that's where the top hand come from. I couldn't try hitting an inside pitch with your top hand wrapped like that.
Yeah, it's impossible.
You can't do it.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, guys. As a fan,
it jams you.
Wait, you guys know this. Sean, can you show us what Bret's talking about, and you guys talk through it for people like me?
Yeah, like Boone would say, like before he started doing it late 90s, it's like you would line up the knocking knuckles where you would like almost knock on a door, right? You know, you line those up. That's like, but a lot of guys now are lining up kind of like the knocking knuckles and the other knuckles. Well, Boone kind of wrapped it big time on the top hand, and it makes sense now talking to him because he says you can't really, that inside pitch becomes a non-factor. You can't hit it.
Right.
So, but as the hitter, especially in the big leagues, you want to be out over the plate. Your whole goal is to get your arms extended. So if you start to eliminate a pitch that you can't do because your top hand's wrapped, it's ingenious. It allows you to drive the ball to right center like you did, right, Booney?
Sean, really crank that top hand, and now take just any swing you want and look at the bat path. It's a perfect path. It's a Jeter. Yeah. It's a Jeter path.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, everything just keeps going right along that line. Yeah. And for me, whether it's a mental trick or not, it worked for me. Right. I mean, we all have to find our things, you know, what makes us, you know, I talk hitting with young hitters nowadays, and they're so mechanical today. You know, I try to get them out of that. Like, listen, let's just get back to, we got to get a good pitch to hit and knock the shit out of it. Okay. That's what we need to do. I don't care about your spin rate and all the bullshit, the exit velocity. Let's get a good pitch. But I talk to these hitters, and it's just really interesting. They'll always ask me about the top hand. It's funny you ask me, because that's a big question I get all the time, is the top hand. And it didn't allow me to get out of myself. I couldn't go around the ball. If I lined my knuckles up, it seemed like I was vulnerable to going around the ball. With this way, I can't go around it. I got to go through it. And like I said, like a punching. Yeah.
It allows you to stay tighter too. I mean, like, you know, it allows you to let the ball get to your body because you're not whippy. You don't have a whippy swing out front. Right. It's almost like a rotational swing.
Right.
Yeah.
And you guys are awesome. Talking about these knuckles versus these knuckles, right?
There.
So
right.
Yeah.
Now, when you cranked it like that, right there, right.
Okay.
Not necessarily the bottom hand. Just keep your bottom hand normal and crank the top hand. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
And by the way, you're right. There you go.
That's really interesting, man. Wait, so you were talking to. I want to stay right here because, you know, there's so many names you're mentioning. Two of the best hitters in Major League Baseball were there when you first came up, and obviously Edgar was there when you went back. Can you talk about? First off, I want to hear about Griffey.
Wow.
Because when you came up with the Mariners in '92 and '93, this guy was Michael Jordan of baseball. I mean, he was at another level. I got the chills asking the question. What was it like playing with Griffey when you first came up as a young kid in '92 and '93?
Humble pie for me. I got to the big leagues. I thought I was really good. You know, I said, You know who I am? By the way, if you don't know who I am, pull up a chair. I'll tell you for about an hour. You know, I think it's obviously I had a lot to learn, and I did learn the hard way. You know, I got knocked down quite a bit in my career. But the thing that was amazing about Kenny is when I got to the big leagues, you know, I got there pretty quick, and I'm sitting there and I realized I got to the big, and it was like Kenny was 30 years old and he was a veteran because he already had 3 years in the big leagues, going on his fourth when I'm just getting there. And I thought, wow, you know, you go through the minor leagues and you're used to being, nobody's younger than you. I was always the kid in the minor leagues. I get to the big leagues and I got a guy that's the same age as me going on his fourth year. And I felt like he was a father figure. You know, it was amazing to watch him day in and day out. And you know, I mentioned Jay Buhner earlier. He was a guy that took me under his wing when I got to the big leagues. And he's good friends with Kenny. And he goes, Booney, he goes, don't try to do what he does, but just watch this guy. He's like from a different planet. He's different than the rest of us. And at the time, Jay was hitting 40 homers a year. And he goes, this guy's like from a different cloth. And I'd watch him and I'd be like, I was amazed. I'm just like, I can't believe the things that he does. And I remember that first year when I got called up, man, I was scuffling. I told you I was hitting 195, 197, whatever. And I mean, I'd never hit that before. And I remember just kind of in my locker and Kenny always coming up to me. He would never do it in a public moment in front of everybody, but he'd take me behind closed doors and have like father-son talks. And we're the same age. I appreciate that from Kenny. I don't know if I've told him that, but that was really important when I was a young player. He was just different, you know, and to this day, I was fortunate enough to play with a lot of great players. But to this day, Ken Griffey Jr., from a talent standpoint, best player I've ever played with. The things he could do defensively, not only offensively. It seemed like he could just do whatever he felt like doing. You know, it's like if I need to get a hit now, I'll get a hit. What do you hit? You know, at the end of the year, I think in '93, he was hitting like 297, and he kind of checked his clock and said, well, we only got 2 games left. I'm definitely going to hit 300. How am I going to do it? And it was just kind of like he'd will it. And you'd look at each other and go, he did it. All right, I got one story for you. You'll love this.
Yes.
And I've told this before. It's one of my favorites. And Lou's involved, of course. We're in Arlington, and it's 2 stadiums ago. It's not the last Arlington. It's the one before that. So you probably weren't there, Case. You hadn't seen this. The visiting clubhouse at this stadium was in left field under the bleachers. So it was a long walk to the dugout. So, you know, I've got about 3 weeks in the big leagues. And, you know, Lou's always calling me son. He doesn't even call me. He doesn't even call me by my name. And he goes, I'm sitting there and Kenny is my locker mate. And I leave to go stretch for the game. And Kenny's sleeping. And he's watching cartoons, kind of taking a nap. I think he's DHing that day. So I go out to run my sprints on the line. I come back in, you know, about 8 minutes before the game's about to start. Lou looks at me. He goes, son. He goes, where's your buddy Junior? I said, Skip, I don't know where the hell he is. I said, what am I, his keeper? He goes, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you go find him? The game's about to start. So Case, I mean, I'm that young player. I'm excited. I got my helmet on. I'm hitting like 6th or 7th. I go back to the locker room, that long walk. Kenny's got his feet propped up, doesn't even have his shoes on. He fell asleep. And I wake him up. And you know that nervous wake up when your alarm didn't go off, but you got something to do? He gave me that one. He's like, oh, puts your shoes on, goes flying down to the because he's hitting third.
Right. Sorry. That was my phone popped on.
As we get to the dugout, I think Omar Vizquel's hitting second. Omar's in the box. Lou looks at him and goes, son, what the hell are you doing? He goes, sorry, Lou, I fell asleep. Grabs his bat, grabs his helmet, shoes on, still not tied. By the time he gets out of the dugout, they're announcing his name. He's got to go hit. He doesn't. He just walks by the on deck circle, goes straight to the box. Still shoes untied, Lou's going, what the hell's going on here? Junior hits the first pitch, 15 rows deep. He runs around. He runs around the bases. He steps on home plate. He comes back to the dugout. He looks at Lou, and he goes, "Hey, Skip, can I go back to what I was doing?" Lou looks at him and goes, "Son, you do whatever the fuck you want to do." That was it.
Oh my God! So
and I'm just this young player. Like I said, I'm ready. I'm hitting seventh. I got my helmet on. I got my helmet on before the national anthem's over with, and I'm looking at this going, "Buhner's right, man. Everything this guy does, he's amazing." He was something. He was something.
I remember, talking about being something different. He would hit early when I played with him in Cincinnati. He'd hit early, and I remember one time going out there early I wasn't going to hit with him because Junior would hit early, and then I would come out, and he was taking batting practice, Booney, but it was home run batting practice. Left center, 4 in a row. Dead center, 4 in a row. At right center, 4 in a row. And I was like, that's incredible that a guy can come out here and just not work on going to left. He's working on driving the ball out of the ballpark to left. And you talked about his swing and what Buhner said about him and all that stuff. The connection of his body, the way that it was connected when on contact was just probably the sweetest swing the game's ever seen at the end of the day.
I think so. I think he's one of those guys, and not to be corny, but he was born to hit. That's just you just look at his swing, and it's not something you can tell it's not something he made up in his mind. All of us have our quirky things that we do to get ready to get in position, right? You did that goofy thing with your leg, and
lifting my leg.
We all do, because we all need to trick ourselves into doing something to get us in position when the ball's in the hitting zone. That's what normal big leaguers, normal big league all-stars, that's what we have to do. But for the freaks of nature, the Michael Jordans of the world, the Tiger Woods, the Ken Griffey Juniors, man, it was so effortless. It was just like, no, God told me just to put my hands here, and I just stride, and it looks like as pretty as it can look.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it here, just go to the side and watch me swing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything he invented or came up with. It was just kind of give me a bat and wham. Oh, this is how you swing. So I think he's just a gifted guy. Not to say he didn't work. I think Kenny was one of those guys that didn't. He wanted you to think that he just rolled out of bed and was that good, but he worked hard behind the scenes more than he led on to.
He almost worked when no one was watching. And I remember asking him about the approach one time. I said, Junior, what are you thinking about up there? Like, what's your approach? And he goes, I remember him. I never forget. He takes the bat and he goes like this, and he's like, I'm just trying to get the head out. And I said, that's your approach? He goes, yep, just trying to get the bat head out. I'm like, well, that's, I guess, it's as simple as you can do it with the swing that you have. Absolutely incredible. Dude, Booney, you playing with Ken Griffey Jr. when you came up, when he was Michael Jordan, obviously Edgar Martinez, one of the best in the game ever. I just want to touch on one more guy that you played with, and when it was Ichiro Mania in 2001 in Seattle. I was at the All-Star game in Seattle in 2001. You were the starting second baseman. That place was rocking. You guys are one of the best teams in the game. I think 116 or 118 win season. Phenomenal. What was it like playing with Ichiro? And especially in 2001 when he was Rookie of the Year, MVP, you were having a monster year. What was that whole thing like? And you got a story about Ichiro that we could take with us?
Ichiro is, man, he knows more English than you think. He was really a charming guy, behind the scenes. Once you got to know him, once he got comfortable with his teammates, coming into spring training, we really didn't know what to think. He was surrounded by people. There was so much Japanese press that was following us. There were 40 guys taking pictures of him warming up on the line in spring training. And so you really didn't have much access to Ichiro because he was surrounded by so many people at the very beginning in spring training. And we'd watch him hit, and he probably didn't hit a ball to the right of second base in a game situation the entire spring. I don't remember him doing that. And everybody kind of going, we know in Japan he's put up these numbers. Is he going to be able to do it at the big league level? And I think that was a question for a lot of people. They knew he was going to be a good player, but they didn't think he was going to be able to do what he did in Japan at the major league level. And then when the season started, I think he chopped his first base hit of the season, and then he was off to the races. He was funny, charming. What can I say? He changed the game in a lot of ways. He changed defenses in the game because he would hit a routine ground ball to shortstop and he'd beat it out, and the shortstop would go, "Wait a minute, nobody beats that out." Well, he was 3 steps out of the box on certain swings. So I think he changed how people defense. The shortstop had to play up and in just to get a routine ground ball, get him out at first base. So I think he changed the dynamic of the game in the early 2000s, especially in the American League, especially in the American League West, where we play a lot of games against each other. The Tejadas from Oakland, they're kind of watching. Alex at the time was in Texas, and it was like, this is something we've never seen before. I said, you better get it ready, because if you're not in, you can't just play normal depth at shortstop. And if Ichiro doesn't completely square it up, slow roller, he's safe every time. So I think he changed the dynamic. It was funny to watch. You talk about Kenny hitting home runs. That's all Ichiro would do in BP. He would take his first round and he'd smoke a couple balls the other way. And then from round 2 on, it was a home run into the right center field bleachers every pitch.
Wow.
And I would sit there.
Huge power.
He would just sit there and just one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And then the game would open and he'd slap one down the third base line. Yeah. It was just his way. That's the way he was. Because me and him it wasn't a real rivalry, but it was 2 different personalities. And he was like, he was cleaning his bat all the time, and he had a humidor for his bat, and his glove had to be pristine. I mean, he'd be polishing it every night. And my glove, me and you play together, Case. My glove was just like, throw it in the corner. That sucker works really good, man. My bats, I don't care if they're dirty. I don't want you to lose them. But as long as they're there. So I remember I'd come in after a play and, I'd throw my glove in, the top of the dugout. Ichiro would look at me and go, "You do not respect your equipment." And I'd look at Ichiro. I said, "My gloves are just as gold as yours." and that was, it was funny. I mean, we had a really good time in those 2000 Mariner teams. Ichiro was at the top of the lineup, obviously setting the tone. He'd walk around, call people home slice, like under his breath. I think the umpires, I forget who it was. Opening day, the umpire, I forget who the umpire was. It wasn't Tom Hallion. Anyway, he came up to me and goes, "Booney, you got a second here?" I said, "What do you need?" I forget who the umpire was. It was one of the veteran guys. And he goes, "Do you know what Ichiro just said to me?" I said, "I could only imagine." He goes, "I asked him how he was doing, and he said, 'I'm doing good.' And he said, 'What's happening with you, home slice?' And I went, and he couldn't stop laughing. I said, "I'm telling you, he comes up with those all the time." So, especially that first year, he was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible. I want to rewind it now, Booney, because I just want to take it back a little bit, because your story is so unique. You and your brother, just being 3rd generation big leaguers. Your grandfather Ray played in the big leagues for 13 years. Your dad Bob played in there for 20 years. He was my manager for 3. And we talked about the other day on your podcast, one of the smartest men I've ever met, as far as the game of baseball goes. Can you take us back to the teams that he played on, especially that Phillies team back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s? And what was it like for you and your brother, to grow up with a dad that played in the big leagues, but to also know that your grandfather lived that life too? I mean, what was it like in the Boone household?
Well, I think, we took it for granted at the time. That was just our life, and it was just normal. And it was just, my kids my buddies in the neighborhood, their dad went to work every day. My dad went to Veterans Stadium, but it was no different. And the cool part was my friends didn't treat me any different. They almost gave me a hard time about it. Like, but it just was what it was. Dad went to the ballpark, and I got to go to the ballpark with him. I thought, doesn't every kid get to do this with their dad? So it was great. I loved all the players. I didn't have a favorite player. Aaron's 4 years my junior, so he started to kind of tag along in I want to say probably the late 70s. But I was at the ballpark with Dad ever since I can remember. Rules were different back then, Sean. It was more carte blanche. As long as I proved myself that I could handle myself on the field, they let me do whatever I wanted. So I was 4 or 5 years old, shagging in the outfield. Wow. I remember taking, that back then they took infield before every game, and I'd take infield at 7 and 8 with Larry Bowa at short, and thought, this is great. And how am I going to make him look bad at short? So, I look back, and it was such a special time for me. And I'm so now, knowing now what I got to grow up and go through that life, man, I was so blessed. I didn't know it at the time, but what a cool childhood just to be able to hang out with those Phillies teams. And I never had a favorite player. Everybody's always got a favorite player growing up. I never did. My favorite player was all the players. One week it was Pete, and then, I loved Schmitty and Carlton. And then my dad got traded to the Angels, and, I'm playing catch with Reggie one day. I'm hanging out with Rod Carew, and that was just my normal childhood. And it was really cool. And, I don't think, I don't know. It's just at the time you're a kid. What are you supposed to do? Take it all in and make sure you appreciate it? No, this is just your life. But you look back, and it was definitely a big influence on me and the career I pursued.
Is there anything that sticks out to you as a kid that you took on even to the big leagues? That maybe some advice somebody gave you that you were like, you know what? This is how I play the game. Or,
well, I think all the little things that I just picked up along the way, being around these guys on a daily basis. But I laugh because I'm asked the question all the time. Well, living in the Boone house, you had a grandpa, you had a dad, your little brother ended up eventually being a big leaguer. I said, I never learned one thing from my father. Never one thing on the baseball field. He never taught me how to catch, never taught me how to hit. Now, later in life, at the professional level, Dad and I worked hand in hand quite a bit. I mean, he was coach, player, and we really worked well together. But as a kid growing up, he never taught me how to throw a baseball. He never taught me how to catch. He never taught me how to hit. He just left me alone. But the one thing he taught me, and I took this with me into my career, is, and if you know Bob Boone, he's a high character guy, and he taught me how to be a professional, how to carry myself, how to walk into a clubhouse, how to act like a big leaguer in a very professional way, in a respectful way. Mm-hmm. But that's the one thing, it cracks me up, because everybody would think, oh, he taught you how to play and you had advantages. I didn't have any advantages. I had advantage of watching him and how he went about his business. And so that I'm truly thankful for. He taught me that.
Incredible. Yeah, your dad, like I said, man, we talked about the other day, but your dad was one of my favorite managers ever, and taught me a ton about the game, and taught me to look at the game differently. I feel like he looked at it, a little different. Back to my rookie year in '98, when you were playing second base, like I said, and I mean it when I said it off the top, you're one of the best second basemen I've ever seen in my whole life. I didn't even know, we were joking around on your podcast the other day, like, you ruined me because I never had to go to my right. I'm like, man, this guy's got everything. He's got things to my left. I didn't even have to go to my right. I had no idea, that could happen. But that year in '98, you got to play with your brother, with Aaron. And you know what? I don't know, man. What was that like for you to play with Aaron?
Another thing, you look back, I look back on it now, really special. At the time, it's such a grind. And this game that we play every day is so hard. And we've got so many things to worry about. It's like, I think it was cool for us because I remember watching Aaron, his ascend to the big leagues. It was cool because Aaron had the attitude that I had, coming up through the minor leagues. My attitude, I got sick of people asking me about what's it like, big shoes to fill, and your grandpa and your dad. I got sick of it. And I just wanted to say, look how I'm hitting here. I'm hitting 330 in AAA. Look at that. Let's talk about that. I'm sick of talking about my dad. I think Aaron had it twofold. He had to talk about his dad, his grandpa, and now his brother.
His brother.
and he kind of had the same attitude, like, screw them. They're not going to get me to the big leagues. I got to get myself to the big leagues. So I remember watching him on his path to the big leagues and being a proud big brother, like, wow, because I know what it's like down there when you're just getting hounded with the stupid questions.
Right.
And he finally made it. And I remember it was really nice because we ran in different circles. You know, Aaron was younger. He was in your
He's
your
running
age.
with me.
He was running with you. I was kind of running with Barry. And so we had our little cliques. But it was really cool to have my brother there because on an off day, I could go have lunch with my brother. But once that game started, it was my third baseman. And you better give me a good feed. And I don't care that you're my brother. Get the ball to me as fast as you can, and I'll work this magic over here, turn this up and play. Just give me the ball.
Give me a good feed. Give me a good feed.
Yeah, on the field, it was second baseman, third baseman. But like I said, there were the little nice things off the field. On an off day, I get to go have lunch with my brother, and now he could be my brother, and we could talk about things other than baseball. So I definitely appreciate it. At the time, I don't think I appreciate it as much as I do now looking back because it's pretty special. It doesn't happen too often that you get to play at the highest level. How about this? All through our life, because of the 4-year difference, we never got to play on any team together, ever. Wow. High school, college. We went to the same college. We actually went to different high schools. But, you know, after my senior year, Aaron was a freshman. Little league, he was always in T-ball. You know, so we never got the first time we played together was at the big league level, not even the minor league. So not too many brothers could say that either. It's pretty unique.
Yeah. So that is so great. There's a memory I have about your brother. And when I go back to you were still playing, and I believe, tell me if I have this wrong, but I think I have it right. I think I saw a clip where you were in the booth when he hit the home run in 2003 in Game 7 against Wakefield. Am I correct on that? And if I am correct, what was that like for you to watch your brother hit one of the most historic home runs in Major League Baseball history?
Really cool. The night before, I'll set it up a little bit for you. The night before, once again, it's 2003. I'm coming off a really good year in Seattle. We fall short of the playoffs at the end of the year. I'm exhausted, and Fox Sports comes to me and they say, "Hey, we want you." They were trying a third man in the booth that year, and I had no interest in being behind any mic at all. You know, I'm Bret Boone, the Seattle second baseman. I don't need all this crap. I knew nothing about. I didn't prepare. I didn't do anything. And eventually I said, no, I'm not going to do that. They came back with a bigger offer and a bigger offer and a bigger offer. And I thought about it. I go, well, what's the downside? You know, they're going to pay me a lot of money to do it. It's really no work. And I'll get to watch Aaron in the postseason. Okay, I'll do it. So basically it was a vacation for me to Boston and New York. So I'm there and Aaron's having a rough time.
He's struggling.
Oh, man, he's horrible. And, you know, I'm just trying to be big brother. It's the night before that the game he hits the home run. And, you know, I'm out partying somewhere.
Right.
And I stop by his condo. And it's him and his wife, Laura. And Aaron's got this look on his face. I mean, he just like somebody stole his lunch money. And he's sitting in the bed. And, you know, I'm big brother. I'm going to kind of come in and give him some tough love. And I looked at him. I said, what are you doing? What are you pouting? And he looked at me and he goes, well, you don't know what it feels. I said, what are you talking about? I don't know what it feels like. You ever flip? I said, flip over my bubblegum card. Look at 1996. I said, don't tell me I don't know how you feel. Don't tell me I don't know what it's like to struggle. I've struggled my butt off in this game, dude. He's like, yeah, but you never, you know, I wasn't having it. My goal that night was to give him a pep talk. And I said, Aaron, let me tell you this. Tomorrow is a new day. You might turn a big double play. You might hit a sacrifice fly. You might get a runner over and the next guy gets him in. You win and you go on to the World Series and nobody cares how bad of a series you had. Remember that. There's something little you can do tomorrow. And I left him with that. I don't know if that pumped him up or not, but you know, this is just kind of because I'd been through a lot of trials and tribulations. I've been through some tough years. I've been through some great years, but man, this game definitely had humbled me at times in my career. So I wasn't just making this stuff up. This game's really hard. And I remember getting to the ballpark the next day. He wasn't in the lineup. And now, as a brother, I feel bad. So it's like, whatever. We got to go do our pregame, and I didn't take it very serious at the time. So I'd show up to the booth. It was McCarver and Buck, and I'd show up to the booth like 5 minutes before the game. Like, Booty, what's your opening going to be? I said, didn't you write one for me? Hey, tonight coming at you, the keys of the game are boom, 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 boom. So they would help me, but I didn't take it very serious. Now, as a current player, it's also very tough to be critical of guys you're going to be playing against in a couple months.
Yes.
And that was the big series where Pedro threw Zim down, and they're asking me questions. Did Pedro hit so-and-so on purpose? And I'm sitting up in the booth. I'm like, I got to face Pedro in a couple months. And I know right now he's out of the game, and I know he's sitting inside watching what I'm saying. Sure enough, I got to a point where I'm like, yes, he hit him on purpose. It's Pedro Martinez. He doesn't miss that much.
Right.
And sure enough, the next day I'm walking through the locker room and he's like, hey, Booney, I hit him with a breaking ball. I didn't mean to hit him. Obviously,
he's listening. Yeah.
Who is that? Was it Soriano? Was the second baseman back then?
Yeah.
Yes, Alfonso.
Soriano. Great offensive player. Not a very good second baseman. And he makes an error during the series. Hey, Booney, what happened on that ball? And I'm going, oh, God.
Oh, God.
I said, well, it happens to the best of us. I've been out there before and I've kicked one. That was my answer on camera. My real answer is he's a bad second baseman. He should be in left field. But when you're a current player, you don't say
You can't
stuff
say
like
that.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Now I'd say it. But back then, I was just trying to get through the game. Where are we going to dinner after the game?
Right.
Anyway, long story short, I'm sitting in the booth, and everybody knows how that game. Aaron ends up pinch hitting.
Yeah.
And I look at the field, and everything kind of slowed down for me. I thought, well, Wakefield's pitching off a normal pitcher, fastball, breaking ball, changeup. Aaron's got no chance right now against a conventional pitcher. Maybe this is what he needs, a knuckleballer, wiffle ball in the backyard. Maybe that's his only chance right now. And he hit it, and I went, because when he hit it, it was a no doubt. I knew it was a home run, and I had nothing to say. And he's rounding first base. And I'm sitting there and I'm starting to think, and I'm emotional, but I'm not emotional. I'm just kind of like, I'm getting goosebumps because I'm thinking now it hits me. I go, this is one of the biggest home runs in the history of this game. Not just a big home run tonight. And then I was kind of flooded, like, this is so cool, because where was he last night? He's in his room sulking. He comes to the yard. I couldn't even imagine he's not in the lineup. Torrey benches him. And now he gets a pinch hit. He hits one of the biggest home runs of all time. I was so happy for him rounding those bases. And I remember the guys in the truck in my ear saying, Booney, what are you doing? You're not saying anything. And I said nothing. And they said, no, that's better. Less is more. Less is more. So that's why I didn't say anything the whole time. I was so happy for him at the time and thinking, this is so cool. He just hit one of the biggest home runs of all time after having one of the worst series probably of his career. And it was cool. And I even made it way, because you know how it is as a player. You never go into that visiting clubhouse. That's right. That's the enemy. Especially that Yankee clubhouse. I respected the hell out of those teams, but I couldn't stand them.
What was it about those teams you couldn't stand?
They left me heartbroken a couple times. Standing there, they whooped my butt in 1999 in the World Series. I was with the Braves. They broke my heart in 2001. But I remember going down to. I made it a point to go down to their locker room that night, and I kind of, I went there and I said, hey, I just got to go in and see Aaron. And they're celebrating. I remember, I think it was Giambi in there, and Booney, what are you doing here? And, I felt uncomfortable, but I had to go give Arnie a hug.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, for those of you listening, I call Aaron.
Call him Arnie. Yeah.
That's Arnie. And I walk in, I just give him a hug, and I was so uncomfortable because they're all celebrating. They got the champagne bottles going. I'm out of my element here. This is not my team. And I just gave him a hug, and it was really cool. And I left, and I just remember that night. It's just, people are always my teammates give me a hard time. Like, Bret, you didn't even say anything up in the booth. I said, I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to be critical of people. They said, yeah, when Aaron hit the home run, I said, that was honest right there. I said, I was frozen. I didn't know what to say. I was so happy for him. So really
God,
cool moment. Really cool
dude.
moment.
Well, you know what's funny? That what was so cool. You talk about, you were obviously one of the best players at the time. Your brother's in the midst of this run with the Yankees. He hits that big home run, and you guys kind of have that, that the big brother, little brother moment, especially the night before when he was feeling the way he was feeling. And we know when you're struggling in the game,
Yeah.
life just stops. It just becomes so clouded. Fast forward 19 years, bro, to a few weeks ago at the winter meetings. You're living in San Diego. I'm out there because I know your brother is like, he's got that same look on his face when everyone thinks Aaron Judge is going to the Giants. And you kind of roll in big brother style and you have a conversation with Aaron. You guys are sitting there and you're talking about, hey, what's happening with Judge? And then you guys get told, what'd you guys talk about? What was the brotherly advice that you gave him in that conversation?
Well, I let him score him for a while. I laughed because I said, Aaron, what are you worried about? He goes, well, I don't know if we're going to sign Judge. It just brought me back to my childhood where, all right, I'll let you come with me again. I said, all right, do you want me to explain this to you, Aaron? Judge ain't going anywhere. What do you tell? Well, I don't know, man. He's been really quiet. I said, he is playing you guys like a fiddle. As much as I respect Aaron Judge, and what an unbelievable year he had, the way he handles himself, I think he's the epitome of a Yankee captain. Let's put it that way. I have all the admiration in the world for him. He gained even more respect from me for how he went about negotiating. He just went in a single year. He upped his value $150 million. I don't think anyone's ever done that in the
It's
history of
unbelievable.
baseball.
Yeah,
But
incredible.
he played it out to a T. He went to San Francisco. They wined, they dined him. He went dark. And he's making Aaron Boone sweat. I see Cashman walking by. He's sweating too. I'm laughing at both of them. I said, do you think? I said, Aaron, first of all, I was a guy that hit home runs the other way. I said, do you realize how hard it is to hit the ball opposite field out of the ballpark in San Francisco? I said, it's ridiculous. Even for the 6'8" Aaron Judge, he's going to lose 15 home runs right away just playing there versus Yankee Stadium because of that short porch and right. I said, no hitter wants to do that. I said, and you think Derek Jeter did a pretty good job during his career? And he said, yeah. I said, I think he did a really good job. I said, if you're Aaron Judge, if you're in that position to play in the Yankee pinstripes for your entire career, be a great player, be the captain of that team, make a ton of money, have the key to New York, you're crazy not to take that. You know the Yankees are going to be in every year trying to win. And if you win a championship, you just wrote your ticket for the rest of your life. The money that you could make somewhere else is going to be tenfold by just being a Yankee your whole career and when it ends. So to me, I think Aaron Judge played it perfect. He made him sweat right down to the end. They ended up paying him $360 million, and I thought it was awesome. But I never thought for 1 second that there was a risk that he wasn't coming back to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Nobody in their sane mind leaves Yankee pinstripes in a free agent situation when the money's all the same.
So Booney, you were right. You were right. When the Yankees come into play, you got your brother hitting hitting the homer in 2003. You got this conversation in 2022 about Judge. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about your experience at Yankee Stadium, 1999 World Series with the Braves. You're having a great year. You guys have one of the best rotations Major League Baseball's ever seen at the time. Take us back to your memories from the World Series. Like, what were I know you guys didn't win it, but just to get there is a big deal. What were some of the memories that you have of that World Series? And, what are some of the stories that you look back on? You're like, man, I'm glad that happened.
Well, I'll tell you, we went on that. I got traded from that was after the 98. So it was 99. I got traded from the Reds to the Braves. And I remember that day kind of being excited, and everybody in the offseason, hey, congratulations, you're going to probably get to go to the World Series, because it was the 90s and that's what the Braves did.
Right.
They won 9 or 10 divisions, I think, in the 90s. And I got to spring training, and Bobby Cox is our skipper, and he sits everybody down and he addresses the new guys. And it was myself, and it was, I believe Brian Jordan was new that year. And he kind of said, hey, guys, what we do here in Atlanta is as I put the lineup up and we go out and we steamroll our opposition, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. We went out. I think we won 103, 104, 105 games. Great team. Chipper was the MVP that year. We get through the playoffs. We get to the World Series, and go to Yankee Stadium. Game 3, we're down 2-0. We're down 0-2, and I remember taking the field on the line, stretching. And I had a moment come over me because I'd been at Yankee Stadium a lot, but I'd never felt like this before. And I thought, whew. It was like I needed one of those brown bags to breathe in. And I ran back into the dugout. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, you knew you were somewhere special. It was game 3, Yankee Stadium. You knew you were somewhere special. And we just couldn't get off the schneid. They were pitching us tough. Just some weird things happened, and in the 8th inning, I think, who was it that hit the homer? I think it was Bernie Williams. We were winning in game 3, and we go to the 9th inning, and Bernie Williams hits a pop-up to right center field. I mean, a pop-up, 340 feet. That sucker went 20 rows deep, and there was no wind the whole night. Maybe not 20 rows. I'm exaggerating, but maybe 5 or 10. And I just thought, how did that ball just go out of the ballpark? And I looked around, and it was like on cue, hot dog wrappers were starting to fly around second base. All of a sudden, it was like something was happening, and powers that be were coming in for the Yankees on their team. And all of a sudden, we ended up losing the game, and I'm going, now we're down 0-3, and they ended up sweeping us. Roger Clemens, who didn't, we handled Clemens great that year. And we weren't worried about Roger Clemens in game 4. Roger came out in game 4, pitched the game of the best game of the year for him. And he shoved it for 3 or 6 or 7 innings. And, we ended up losing 0-4. I go back there in 0-1 with that team you talked about, the Mariner team. We won 116 games and thought we were just going to waltz in there and win,
right,
because that's what we did all year to every team. And it didn't matter. There were no exceptions. And we just thought it was just a matter of time before we beat the Yankees. Then we go to the World Series. Then whoever we play there, we're going to win there. We're going to go get our trophy. We're going to get on the float. We're going to go home and have a great offseason. Well, it didn't work out that way, And all of a sudden, game 3, I remember game 3. I think it was game 3 in the ALDS. And I went into the dugout, and it was the 8th inning. And I remember the setup guy for the Yankees. It was like a 0-0 game. The setup, I forget who was the setup guy for the Yankees. He set up Mariano. I'll tell you what, though, I could never get a hit off him. And I remember walking into the dugout and go, somebody's got to do something right now if we're going to win this game. And I go up there, and I'm facing my nemesis. I'm like, I'd never get a hit off this guy. I'm talking a big game. I hit what I think is a pop-up, and I kind of throw my bat down.
To right center?
No, to left. Keeps going, lands in the bullpen. Home run.
Yes.
I come in the dugout. I said, yeah, what I said. See, you got to go do something. I mean, completely didn't expect it. So we were winning, but at the time it was like 1-0. I'm like, all right, we're going to get this. We're going to move on. This is what we do. They came back. I think it was Knobloch that time, or Tino. I forget who it was, but something weird happened. And next thing you know, it's a home run. And I'm going, how does this happen? We're just up 1-0. We have Kazuhiro Sasaki. He's been money all year, and now all of a sudden he's giving it up, and it's tied, and we end up losing that game. So the long story short, Yankee Stadium, just a lot of – I love Yankee Stadium, probably my second favorite stadium that offensively for me, I just love going there. But a lot of tough luck memories there where I got beat in some pretty big games.
Boone, when you look back at your career, is there a favorite moment or two that sticks out?
Favorite moment or two. Yeah. They're actually, and my moments are goofy. I appreciated the All-Star appearances. The All-Star games were great. I mean, I remember my first All-Star game and how excited I was, and just being in there with the best players in the world. But some of my 2 favorite moments, and they're probably, people think they're kind of strange. I came up as an offensive second baseman, and everybody was always telling me, "Oh, he's offensive, he's offensive," and I always took that personal and said, I'm a pretty good defender too, and I worked really hard at it. I worked really hard at it, especially when I was a young player. And when I won my first Gold Glove, I got that phone call, and that was a huge because I had a couple of years where, man, I think I should have won it that year, and I didn't, and that happens in our game. But I won my first Gold Glove. That was a huge moment for me, and another big moment was when we had the All-Star game in Seattle in 2001. It was my first home run derby. I got asked to be in the home run derby, and they announced my name, and I got in the box, and I'd never had a standing ovation like that. I had a lot of great ovations in Seattle, really cool. The people were great to me in my time there, but that standing ovation for my home run derby and my home crowd on that special team that we had 8 All-Stars that year. It gives me goosebumps to this day because I always prided myself on being kind of a tough guy, and I don't need you to cheer for me, and But I'll tell you that kind of moved me. I stepped out of the box. I don't think I had tears in my eyes, but it just was a moment where, wow, it pinched me right now. This is kind of I grew up in this game, but I'm at the All-Star game hitting fourth for Joe Torre. I'm at the home run derby, and I'm getting a standing ovation like I've never heard before. It was really humbling and really cool. So really goofy, big moments for me in the game, but those are two of my biggest.
That's awesome, man. I got one more question, a follow up off of that, because I never got a chance to experience it. But as a player, watching guys do the home run derby, when they take the turtle away and you're standing there and you're like, okay, this is not what I do out here on the field. What's it like hitting in the home run derby, and does it feel naked out there?
Naked, and I was horrible at it, but believe me. I think the guys today, they train for it. I think they like take a week and just work without the cage over them.
Yeah.
And so they're better prepared. I also think they have a better setup now, how they go about it. The pitch is very, and you got the BP guys just laying in there. But first time I did it, horrible. Just what you expect. You take that cage away, it's different. Now it's game time. It's not home run derby time. I'm not a great BP home run guy anyway, but it's just I was asked to do it. Of course, when you're asked to do something like that, of course you say yes.
Yeah.
Who am I to say no to something like that? So yeah, I saved face in my first one. I remember what's weird, Case, is the cameras that are right in front of you, because you don't want to if you hit a hard ground, well, you don't want to break the camera. I remember worrying about stupid stuff like that. But I remember Troy Gloss was in the home run derby in Seattle, and he got 0. Back then, you only got 10 pitches. You made it out, and you went on from there. It wasn't like today where you can hit 100 homers.
Right.
So Gloss he hit 0. I remember him coming back, and he had this look on his face like he was just demoralized, like he was humiliated and embarrassed. Now, as players, we know who cares if you hit a home run. If you hit a home run, great. If not, this is just an extra thing. The fact that you're here and you're an all-star, you're probably having a pretty good year. And I remember teasing him, going, "It's really not a big deal, dude." And he's like, "Yeah, you don't know how I feel right now. I feel so stupid." I'm like, the rest of us as players, we're not looking at you like it's stupid. Right. We know what it's like. Fast forward to 2003, I'm in the home run derby in Chicago. I hit 0. I'm walking, and I'm trying to be cool about it. Like I wasn't trying to hit one. I knew right then how Troy Gloss felt. And now I get it. Because I felt about this big. The guy interviewing you after, he doesn't know what to say. It's awkward. They're giving you a Gatorade. It's like, what do I need this Gatorade for? It was embarrassing. It was humiliating. I came home the whole second half of 2003. Everywhere I went, that's all the fans would talk about. Nice home run derby, Boone. Swinging. So, yeah, interesting. I'm not a fan. I hate it, but I was honored to get invited to 2 of them.
Yeah, dude, just the fact that you were in 2 of them, we know that means you're doing something right.
That's Case, when I came home and my teammates were getting on me like, "Booney, how do you hit 0? It's embarrassing." I said, "Try getting invited before you have an opinion."
That's the truth. Man in the arena, right? Exactly. I love it. last thing, Booney, we do a little segment called Who Owned You and Who Did You Own? So when you go back, who owned you and who did you own?
Who owned me? It's pretty simple. You get asked that all the time as a hitter. I just go like this. Maddox Smoltz-Glavin.
They owned a lot of people. And then who would you own? Like, who were you like, oh, yeah, baby. So glad they're on the bump.
Yeah, like who made your contract?
Chili. I didn't have any guys that made my contract, but I liked Andy Bennis for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Swindell, David Wells, Kurt Schilling. Love Face and all those guys. Now, later in their career, they got to me a little bit. David got me the last few years of my career where I would wear Wells out, and we both live in San Diego, and it was funny for a while. We were teammates in Cincinnati for a minute. But at the end of my career, I think David he gave me a little payback and got the best of me. But those are the guys. But it's simple on the who owned me. Yeah, Randy Johnson owned me as well. I think I was one for lifetime against him. Randy Johnson, he was a teammate of mine in Seattle.
Yeah, I was going to say, you played with him. Yes.
So then I go to spring training, and you remember we had to play in Tucson when he was with Arizona. You had to go to Tucson, take the bus. I took Randy deep in Tucson, and now he's an ex-teammate, and he wore me out. He owned me. So I was rounding the bases in Tucson. He's chasing me around the base, going, "Booty, it doesn't count at spring training." I said, "The hell it does, and I'm counting it." So I took Randy deep, but he's right. It didn't count.
By the way, Jared Washburn case, I just found this one. 12 for 34 with 4 homers and a 353 average and a 421 on base. Ramon Ortiz you ruined his career, 406. Who else did you? Let's see, average real quick.
I'll tell you what, check out, a guy I hated facing him, but always seemed to get a hit when I came out of it. Mike Hampton.
Oh, yeah.
I never took him deep.
He was uncomfortable. Everything moved, and it moved late.
Yeah. Pedro, I hated facing Pedro, but I always snuck a hit out of there.
Yeah.
Those are smart. Those are shorter guys, too. That's interesting. Wonder if that had something to do with it.
So funny.
Anyway.
Who knows?
Well, Booney, man, this has been incredible, dude. Like, Chinch and I are texting back and forth that we could be here for 5 hours, but obviously we know you have a life, too, and you want to get on. But, listen, I want to – first off, like I said at the beginning, the Boone podcast, for all of our listeners out there, go listen to this thing. It's incredible. The way Booney lightens it up, lines it up with these guys. He has such a relationship with a lot of some of the best players out there. So check out the Boone podcast. How else can our listeners find you, Booney?
BretBoonePodcast.com. We got some changes coming up that'll be revealed shortly, but BretBoonePodcast.com. You can get all the episodes. I think we're up to right around 250 now. Wow. Or anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Stitcher, all those things I don't know about. Wherever you get your podcast,
No, there's a link, Case. On your Instagram, Case, there's a link to Bret's podcast from one of your things that you don't know how to do, but you did pretty well that time. There's a link to Bret's podcast on your Instagram.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, Booney.
All right, guys. It's been fun.
Yeah, been a great time, dude. Enjoy the San Diego weather, bro. I'm jealous that you live out there. It's incredible. I'm here.
I'll tell you what, it's a little nippy today. I think it's down to like 64.
Oh, 64. Me and Chich are in Pittsburgh and New York. We're freaking grinding over here. 64.
Yeah.
I'd be having no clothes on right now, running around the house like Frank the Tank. Incredible. But Booney,
guys,
man.
You got it. Go ahead.
I just want to say thanks a lot, dude. Really appreciate it, brother. And looking forward to talking to you again soon, my man.
All right, guys. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Wow. That's all. I mean, what else do you say, dude? Like,
dude.
I mean, so much. First off, Booney's stories are so good. My first year in the big leagues, dude, he was my guy next to me. He helped me so much with just getting comfortable in the game. Just his stories, man. The history of the Boones, the histories of the Boones, of Ray Boone, Bob Boone, Bret Boone.
Well,
Aaron
listen,
Boone,
let's go to a level. So for me, I get to we just had Christmas and New Year's. So people ask me questions because I worked in baseball for my career. So I have some stories. Then I meet somebody like you who has amazing stories, and you tell your stories. That's why our podcast is good. It's because of your amazing life that you've had in baseball. This dude has 3 generations of not only stories, but like, hey, yeah, me and Ken Griffey were the same age, and we talked about hitting. Or, hey, yeah, Lou Piniella and I got into fist fights. Like, holy shit. You know, like being 4 years old, like, or being, well, oh my God, when he was talking about being with Larry Boa, taking infield and trying to mess with Larry Boa's infield. Can you imagine what Larry Boa felt like when 10-year-old Bret Boone's running around the field and he's trying to like get his prep in for the game? Holy shit. I mean, that dude's, I mean, he's a legend. That family, they are part of the fabric of this game. Am I wrong? Fabric. The 4 of them, grandfather, successful, dad, successful,
13, he played,
2 sons.
Played 13 years, dude. 13
yeah, screw
years,
the Mannings. Screw the Mannings. The Mannings are got nothing on the Boones, bro. Seriously.
I'm so fortunate too, bro. I played with Bret 1 year, my rookie year. Played with Aaron for 6, and Bob was my manager for 3. So the Boones have been in my life. Next up, Bob Boone at some point. I'm gonna call him. We'll get him on. And we'll go down memory lane.
Wow, you're locked in.
Yeah. Incredible, dude. So, Chinchy, man, I hope everybody out there enjoyed this one. This is a really good one.
If you're a baseball fan, you gotta like this show, man.
Yeah.
And this dude is baseball. He lives, breathes, is physically a picture in the dictionary of baseball as a Boone family member at some point, for no question.
And his podcast is incredible, too, man. Incredible. So, Chinchy, I love you, brother. To everyone out there, keep downloading, subscribing, sharing our podcast. Let's get it out there and get these interviews out there. If you're a baseball fan, if you're just a fan of sports and people, this is some great stuff. So, all right, brother, I love you. Stay grateful, and I'll see you tomorrow, my man.
Awesome.